We've heard these similar promises before. For 10 years, we've had Liberals in power promising us that deficit spending would make us richer. If I had a nickel for every time I heard the word investment, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't be a politician. And we were told that even though the government was going to spend more, it at the same time was going to exercise financial restraint. In fact, in the last federal budget, some 18 months ago, because they needed extra time, but we still got this budget, the Liberals set out 3 key fiscal anchors. One was to cap federal deficits at about $40 billion. The second was to maintain a declining debt-to-GDP ratio. And third was shrinking deficits to below 1% each year. But unfortunately, Budget 2025 breaks every single one of these goalposts. But these goalposts weren't selected out of thin air, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it was the Liberal government that put these in place. In the 2024 budget, the Liberals said that, for example, reducing the debt-to-GDP ratio was, quote, key not only for fiscal sustainability, but also to preserve Canada's AAA credit rating, which helps maintain investors' confidence and keeps Canada's borrowing costs as low as possible. So this same government last year said that these goals were so important to our AAA rating, but now want us to believe that they are not important, and therefore we should adopt some new fiscal anchors. I think Canadians can be forgiven for questioning why that is. The deficit, Mr. Speaker, has ballooned to over $78 billion. Rather than lowering the debt-to-GDP ratio, Budget 2025 will actually see it rise in this fiscal year and the next several fiscal years. Lastly, deficits will not stay below 1% of GDP, but will rise to 2.5% of GDP in this fiscal year. In fact, Budget 2025 shows that deficits will be above 1% of GDP well past 2030. Now, I know the Liberals love to talk about our AAA credit rating, but they don't like to talk about is what the credit rating agencies are saying today. And in fact, just after the introduction of this budget, Fitch, one of the international credit rating agencies, took note of the budget, unfortunately not in a good way, Mr. Speaker, and said the following of Canada, quote, persistent fiscal expansion and a rising debt burden have weakened its credit profile and could increase rating pressure over the medium term. Now, Fitch went on to warn the government, and I hope they're listening to this warning, that, quote, the Canadian government has a track record of upward deficit revisions with subsequent budget updates consistently worse than prior projections. Federal finances run a high risk of further deterioration. These aren't my words, Mr. Speaker. They're not the words of the opposition. They're the words of our credit rating agency, upon which our AAA credit rating depends. And that's a troubling analysis by this credit agency, Mr. Speaker, because any change to that credit rating would be catastrophic and would lead to much higher debt interest charges for Canadians.